Warning, this guide features Day 1 strats for the fight Arcadion M1S. Better strats can and will be discovered if they haven't already, so be mindful. Hi guys, and welcome to a Hector lecture guide to the fight Arcadion M1S. This is Black Cat. For this fight, you're going to need clock spots. Really important with these. These clock spots are going to change where you're rotating around at different points in time, so you need to decide whether or not you want to do true north clock spots that work like this, where you're always going to be in the same spot relative to the map, so north-south, or if you want to do boss relative clock spots, which means that you rotate when the boss rotates. Entirely up to you, but be aware that this guide will feature true north versions of clock spots. You're also going to want to have a partner position. These are color-coded partners is what I've done here, or tank healers rotating counterclockwise. Finally, make sure that you also know your light party. The fight will begin with Quadruple Crossing. This is going to target the 4 nearest players with a cleave. Here I have the entirety of the DPS taking it first. This will give them a vuln. The boss is going to repeat this cleave, but you need a different player other than the ones who just took it to take it, so the tank healers are now going to go in to make sure they bait this. The boss will now repeat the exact same 2 attacks in the same locations, but you can dodge them. So dodge out of the way of where the first attacks were baited, and then dodge into that to avoid the second set. Biscuit Maker is a 2-hit tank buster that leaves a vuln, so it's going to either require a tank swap or an invuln from one of the tanks. The boss will cast 9 lives, which just gives it a buff that's going to mean that it will store future mechanics. We're going to see One-two Paw. This plays out exactly the same as it did in normal mode, so dodge one cleave, then dodge the other. This One-two Paw is going to get stored in the boss and used later, so you need to remember which side was safe. In this case, I'm remembering left safe first. The boss will cast Soul Shade and spawn 2 clones on a random cardinal and a random intercardinal. These clones are going to then take that One-two Paw inside of them. Later on, they're both going to cast that at the same time, so we need to make sure we're to the left of both clones. Just sort of look at one and turn your camera around until you are to the left of both clones if left is safe first. After a 9 lives cast, the first cleave from both clones goes off. They're about to cleave so that you need to be on the right side of both. To dodge this, it's always just a diagonal movement straight through the boss. This will be immediately followed by either double swipe or quadruple swipe. Double swipe is light party stacks, because there are 2 total attacks. If instead we had gotten quadruple swipe, that means you need to be with your partner. This is also going to be saved in the boss and put into this clone via Soul Shade, meaning that at the end of the next mechanic, we need to do the same thing we just did, either light parties or pairs. Because we just did pairs, we're going to remember pairs is what's next. The boss will now do a leaping Quadruple Crossing. This is the same mechanic from the beginning, but we need to go and do it relative to where the boss will be jumping. Here DPS are in first to bait, then tank healers are in, then we rotate, and now, while we're dodging the second AoE, we need to make sure that we resolve the mechanic from the clone, so we need to be in pairs. Here's how this would look if instead light parties had been stored. Do the first cleave baits exactly the same, but then make sure that at the very end you go into light parties. Preferably, you'd agree on a set position like northwest, southeast for where your light parties will go on intercardinals, but there's always time after the cleave to adjust, and this isn't very hard hitting. You can survive it even if only 3 people are in it. Bloody Scratch is next. This is a hard hitting raid wide. Make sure to mitigate it, as in day 1 gear this will kill unmitigated. Now we get Mouser. This is that red tile mechanic you'll remember from normal mode, and it comes here again pretty similar to how it was in normal mode. However, there are a very small number of set patterns. There are 2 dodges you can basically learn that will allow you to dodge whatever you see. Stand on 4, look at the 3 waymark. If 3 is hit once, you're simply going to dodge from 4 to 3, and you're done. If 3 is hit twice, you're going to dodge onto 3, and then onto 2. So here's 3 is hit once, and we're looking at that 3-way mark, and we see it's hit twice. So we're going to do the 4 to 3 to 2 dodge. As the tiles start getting destroyed, as soon as 3 is destroyed, dodge onto it. And as soon as 2 is destroyed, dodge onto that. You're now done. You're going to be left with a set of tiles that looks like this. The boss will cast Copycat as 4 of the tiles get repaired, brought back to new. Copycat will spawn a clone, and we're now going to get the punches with the knockback that we saw in normal mode, but with some twists. First, just like in normal mode, this is either going to target all tank healers or all DPS one at a time first. The boss is going to do one of two animations. You're seeing the first one now, where the boss kneels down and prepares for an uppercut. This will play out just like normal mode, knocking you away one tile. However, instead of being knocked back relative to where the clone is, you need to turn and face towards where you want to get knocked back. So you can see H1 is facing towards the tile on the right. That's where they're going to get knocked to. Additionally, every other player needs to make sure that they are not in line with the player who's about to get punched, because every tile, horizontal and vertical to them, is about to have a big knockback AoE that will kill you. The clone teleports, punches away the player, and it cracks the tile as they land, and as long as everyone's diagonal from that player, they avoid the knockback. The next player is targeted, and you'll see that there's a different animation this time. This time the boss seems like they're setting up for like an overhead slam punch. In this case, you don't want to stand on a cracked tile. You want to instead stand on a fully repaired tile, because you're not going to get knocked away. You're just going to get slammed right where you are. Just like before, every other player makes sure that they are diagonal from the player getting punched. This repeats for the final two players of that role, making sure everybody's diagonal. And I want to show you something nifty you can do with H2. If you struggle to see the animation or tell the difference between the two of them, you can always just go to the corner of the tile and face towards the opposite corner. This means that even if it's the knockback, you're still going to land on the same tile, cracking it. This avoids having to look at it whatsoever, because you can just always be on the same tile. You never have to stand on a cracked tile. However you resolve it, there's a Biscuit Maker Tank Buster. And then Shockwave is going to be a knockback. This cannot be immune. And you'll see the stage is being repaired, but two of the corners are repaired slightly quicker. We're in light parties because we want each light party to get knocked back, one west, one east, and we want to make sure we adjust so we're getting knocked back into those corners that are repaired first. In this case, 2-4. This is a huge knockback, so be all the way in on the boss, get knocked all the way to the corner, and we have spread markers now. Simply have your tanks and melees go in towards the boss, tank healers left, DPS right. After this, we get another 9 lives, and the boss is going to cast a leaping One-two Paw. Resolve this the same as normal mode, dodge the first, then the second cleave. Both the leap and the One-two Paw are going to get saved in buffs on the boss and going to get put into a clone. So you need to remember, and instead of doing left or right save first, I prefer inside save first or outside save first, as things are going to get turned around in a second. Boss casts Soul Shade, and one of the clones is going to spawn in the middle. This clone is now going to have that leaping One-two Paw. So you can think of it as it has both the One-two Paw and it has the leap. The leap is relative to the way the clone is facing, so I'm going to just flip the buff around because that'll show the direction the clone is actually going to move from their perspective. There's another 9 lives. And now a leaping Quadruple Crossing, just like before. Get into your clock spots. And there's nothing special with this one, so do it exactly the same way as you've been doing throughout the entire fight. Both the leap and the Quadruple Crossing are going to get saved as buffs and put into a clone in middle. This time it was a right leap, so a right leap is saved. You want to now pull the boss to either middle, or if both of the clones are going to jump the same side, you can pull the boss over towards that side for more uptime. The boss will tether randomly to one of the two clones and prepare for it to do its mechanic. Here it's going to do the One-two Paw, but it's going to jump one tile over, so it's going to be over sort of in line with the B waymark. We position on the inside because we remembered inside safe first. And you'll see that we've got the light party splits, light party 1 north, light party 2 south. That's because during this there will always be Tempestuous Tear. It's 2 line stacks. Take the line stacks while you dodge, and then move across to the other half. Now you can immediately position the boss right where the second clone is going to jump. Note, it's not going to jump on an intersection. It's going to be exactly perfectly horizontal from the 3 and 4 waymark. Get into your spread positions, but don't have any roll commit to being the in roll yet. That's because this comes with Nail Chipper, and either all DPS or all supports are going to get targeted with a marker. These players cannot take the first cleave, so the other roll has to. This means that we're now doing it backwards from how we've done it the other times, with tank healers in first. They'll get the same marker later, but this won't go off for a while. Rotate to dodge the AoEs, And then make sure you're with your partners at the end. Preferably, the players who are now going to get hit with the nail chipper AoEs should be out, but as long as you are not overlapping those AoEs, they only hit a non-marked player, it's not a problem. We get another Bloody Scratch raid-wide, and we get the second Mouser. Remember our rules from before? We're stood on 4, we see 3 hit once. But now as all of the red tiles appear, 3 never gets hit again. This means that we wait for 3 to get hit, and then just walk onto it, and the mechanic is resolved. We're left with a similar pattern, and things start to play out similarly. The stage is brought back, Copycat spawns a clone, and we're going to start having the punches. Since tank healers were targeted the first time, DPS are now going to get targeted the second time. It can be the reverse of that. A DPS gets targeted with a punch, and they're going to go into position, and everybody's going to be diagonal from them. Now, you're going to get one of 2 mechanics stacked with this. Either Overshadow, which is a line stack marker that you need to take as a group. Here you can see R1 resolving their punch in the same tile while we take the line stack. Or Splintering Nails. This is instead a conal AoE that targets 1 tank, 1 healer, 1 DPS, so you split into roll stacks. Tanks left, DPS right, healers in the middle. Make sure that you're always diagonal from the player getting punched. This will repeat for the other 2 players that still need to get punched, and it's random whether or not you get an Overshadow or a Splintering Nail, but you will get 2 of each. When all's done, you get a Biscuit Maker Tank Buster, another Shockwave Knockback. It's going to play out exactly the same as before with the spread AoEs. And when all's done, you've got 2 more mechanics to deal with. Raining Cats is first up, and in preparation for this, I recommend positioning like you see here. Light Party 1 is near to the hitbox, or in it. Light Party 2 is slightly out of the hitbox. And you have the 2 tanks in front of their parties. They grab tethers, and now the positioning's very specific here. You need to have the nearest player and the farthest player be players that don't have a tether. That's because the nearest player and the farthest player get targeted with some shared damage AoE, and if a player with a tether takes it, they will die. So to do this, we have 1 player in Light Party 1, make sure they are in the hitbox, 1 player in Light Party 2, make sure they are well out of the hitbox, and the 2 players taking tethers are going to stand on the hitbox. The cones go off and the stacks go off, and now we just need to swap. So have a roll like, say, healers next, take the tether, and get into the same positions we were just in. Repeat this until everybody has taken the tether once. Here you see the order tanks, healers, melee, range, but the order does not matter. Now, if all of this tether swapping feels a little bit too complicated, there is a way you can use your tank invulns to make this a little bit simpler. Have a roll like melees, take the first tethers, and resolve it as normal. Now have your tanks take the tether, and still resolve it as normal. But following the second hit, have 1 tank go in, 1 tank go out, and everybody else stack on the hitbox. You can now just sit here for the final 2 attacks, and as long as your tanks both pop invuln, nobody else takes any damage, no more tether swaps needed. The boss will cast Copycat, and we get our final mechanic. A clone spawns in the north, and we're going to get the same Devour mechanic that we saw earlier, with a bunch of AoEs and paw prints going around. With good DPS, there's a decent chance you'll skip this mechanic. You need to make sure while dodging this, you stay near to the north-south line, because the boss will combine it with One-two Paw. Dodge to the safe side and making sure you're not in any AoEs. The first cleave will go off at the same time as the final bit of the clone, and then immediately dodge to the other side. Your gap closer is really helpful here. All that's left is 1 more Mouser, but you'll notice quite quickly something's wrong here. Too many tiles are getting hit. This is not going to leave any tiles safe. Try to stay alive as long as you possibly can by staying on a melee tile, and try to kill the boss before your final tile breaks, or it's game over. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed.